You are the Evil Overlord. You have kidnapped the princess. Unfortunately, she developed Stockholm Syndrome, and she is far more evil and insane than you are. It was time for me to go. I had been the fifth evil sorcerer to inhabit this lair. I was also 1 through 4. Keeping the 5 bordering kingdoms on their toes was an enjoyable but easy task. Too easy. I toyed with conquering them, but then what do? Govern directly. No thanks. I'm a scare the livestock, rattle the nobility, and frustrate the diplomats kind of guy. I play them off against each other and enjoy the show. I'd rather rule them without them being aware. When the challenge goes out of the work, that's when I pull a princess job. Pretty straightforward. Find a princess whose hand is being sought by 1 or 2 princes, kidnap her, and pretend that you plan on marrying her. The prince's blood rushes to his head, he leads a force to come save her, and kills me. Well, not me. A simple illusion spell allows me to fake death easily. The prince carries away the princess, and they live happily ever after, building their fairy tale legacy. From my ashes, sometimes they burn my fake dead body. I arise again like a phoenix. Different color scheme, new name, and new evil laugh. I have dozens. I gather a new group of minions except Fred. I like him so much I made him eternally 30 years old. He's been with me 50 years. Fred and I put together a band and we discover this abandoned lair. From here, we start our new reign of terror. The southern Bulworth kingdom caught my attention. Fred reported that Princess Aurelian was betrothed to Prince Festus of the neighboring kingdom Grimaldi. The 2 kingdoms had been on war footing for years, thanks to perceived transgressions made by both sides along their shared border. The transgressions were true. The offending parties were my men in the colors of both kingdoms. Good times. Fred was at my side the night we grabbed Aurelian. I silenced her voice with a simple spell, and Fred scooped her up. She struggled, but his steady hands ensured the plan went smoothly. A note was left announcing my plans to marry her and claim the Bulworthian throne with our supposed offspring. Within days, word reached me that Prince Festus was building an army from both kingdoms. Fred took care of the princess while I watched the festivities disguised amongst the rabble. The volunteers were big, buff men with countless battle scars. Their leader Festus was a moving speaker, but his face left something to be desired. They announced their route and estimated a week's travel time. For the next 3 weeks, I made those men go through hell, literally at one point. Between setting traps, my men ambushing them, and occasional magical creature attacks, I would pop in and out of my lair. The princess was as sharp as she was beautiful. I would mock the daring travels and sacrifices of her betrothed to her. I talked up the benefits of being an independent ruler over the pathetic men who saw her as a prize and not a person. Her sharp wit became my favorite exchange, and I could tell her emotional walls were shifting. The reunion of the royalty would be memorable. The prince was finally at my door. I'll give Festus credit. He's a great fighter. Everyone else who has stormed this lair attempted stealth and used tactics. Festus charged ahead, causing more chaos and bloodshed than needed. It was magnificent. My men fled and died while Festus's men mostly just died. Finally, at the top of my highest tower, in a violent thunderstorm I raised for the occasion, Festus broke through my door. "You will pay for what you did," the bulbous-nosed prince declared. "Wait," came a whisper. It was Aurelian. She stepped out of the back chamber where Fred had been holding her. There was an unnerving calm in her voice. She continued, "I will strike down my captor." She reached out for Festus's gleaming blade. He knelt down and handed her the sword, his sneer curling confidently across his face. The sneer turned to shock and rode that expression straight to the floor as the princess's swift strike separated his head from his shoulders. "I am no prize," the bloodied princess declared. "When I return home, it will be as a conqueror." She threw the sword on the ground and walked toward me. This was new. I've never had one go native on me. Prospects popped into my head. Could I co-rule? She was breathtakingly beautiful and very intelligent. I'm not sure I can do the whole dynasty thing. My thoughts were cut short by a blade suddenly protruding through my chest. I turned to face Fred. He had a look of shame mixed with ambition on his face. I stumbled backward toward the window. Lightning struck the blade that still protruded through me. In a blaze of fire and plasma, I fell from the tower, exploding on impact. My signet ring was the only thing recovered. The princess placed it on Fred's finger and declared him her husband. It's been dark days for the 5 kingdoms. 4 have already fallen, and the 5th one is barely holding out. That is where I come back in. I have put together a ragtag group dedicated to freeing our realms. The Overlord and her husband will fall. Justice shall rule the world again, at least until I decide to start anew. A young man entered my tent. Julian. Julian. I looked up from my map and started to look around for Julian when I realized I'm Julian. It's been my name for a mere 3 years. I've had so many through the years that you slowly lose track. The name I always remember is my birth name. I don't dare share it, as knowing a true name gives sorcerers power over each other. It's been decades since I last heard my name. I'm unlikely to hear it ever again. What do you require, my liege? I inquired of the young prince before me. I'm ready to depart, the boy stammered quickly. Excellent, sire. I clapped my hands, and my papers and belongings started to pack themselves away into a small wooden box. I was showing off again to build this child's confidence. To his men, I'm a scruffy, bearded old man carrying a tree branch as a staff. I appear to be a common magic user. I can conjure, I know many tongues, and I can heal wounds and illnesses. In front of the boy, though, I amp it up a bit. I need his confidence to grow. A legend needs to form around him and his quest. He is the last living royal of the 5 kingdoms, apart from the self-styled High Queen. Walking outside my tent, I put my small box on my horse. The boy started to help me fold up the tent. I stopped him with a look. He turned to his men and started telling them to break camp. He had decided to leave this morning so we'd end the day in a defensible area. I had told him the time to leave and the reason, but I acted impressed by his decision. The men nodded in agreement. It really didn't matter. No group of soldiers would be able to attack us with me around. Each day played out the same. The boy told us where we would travel, and we traveled safely. Sometimes we crossed signs of troop movements or could hear them marching through a valley below. They never crossed us. They'd destroy our band of 40 if they came close. They were highly trained soldiers. We were displaced minor nobles and hired swords. The High Queen had taken her own kingdom first. The treasonous Fred had provided documents saying that the Bulworthian monarchs had conspired with me against their only daughter and her betrothed, Festus, to bring the 2 realms to war. She found support from dissident groups which I had founded for fun years ago. Her parents were toppled and executed. She then rallied the nation to join with the kingdom of Grimaldi, whether Grimaldi wanted to or not. Again, seeking help from unhappy groups founded by me, Aurelian overthrew another government. That combined army was more powerful than anything that could be wielded by the other 3 nations. It simply came down to numbers. Still, the speed at which she accomplished everything was astounding and gave me irrational worries. She was too smart, even with Fred's help. We safely skirted the troops for 2 weeks, but at the start of the 3rd week, we finally entered the Talon Woods, my realm, a refuge from the everyday drudgery of normal human life. The vines and brush started to part as I approached. I had to motion to make them stop. The boy, Prince Henry, turned to me and spoke. "Your show, wizard." I almost scowled at the term, even though it was what I was portraying. I mumbled a simple light spell into my tree branch, then added extra flourishes and random words for effect. The staff gave off a greenish glow. I gave the vines and brush the signal to start reacting to me again, and started forward. To the men, it appeared as if I was warding off evil on the prince's command. I had sold myself as an advisor on a previous successful mission to dislodge one of my personas. I offered routes to the prince to choose from. No matter which he chose, I'd make it seem like the wisest choice. To his merit, he chose well anyway. He would make short work of any group I had ever had defending myself in the tower. Based on my research, Aurelian had not bothered to keep many of my men. Only 20 guarded her, just enough to make our hero group take losses they'd remember and make a hero of the boy. I enchanted his sword and armor, then called it a night. A high-pitched screech awoke me. I smiled, feeling my strength return. We finally reached the tower. After much show and fake spellcasting, I allowed the door to recognize me and open up. The defenders were predictable and weak, fleeing after a few minutes of fighting. Frankly, it's why I hired them to begin with. All show. Still, we faced them with fewer men than planned, so our numbers dwindled to a mere 17. I kept the minor nobles and prince alive, but not much was left of our actual combatants. The prince, with the help of magically augmented strength, kicked in the door to the throne room. My throne room, where I died many times. The High Queen sat in my chair. I scanned the room for my fellow sorcerer, but there were no signs of him. I stepped forward, alone. I looked behind me. Everyone else in my party was frozen. Trap spell, powerful enough to stop everyone but me and its caster. It went against everything I was taught, but her smug look and singed hair told the tale. She was a natural. Enjoying the story? Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. All right, let's dive back into the story. I have to thank you, she began. Locking me up in your tower was the greatest education and opportunity I could have received. My parents hated me. They were scared of my powers. They kept me locked away until I learned to suppress them. Electric arcs began flowing up her fingertips as she continued. Then you appeared and grabbed me. I could feel your power, but you never felt mine. An arc shot out and exploded one of our foot soldiers. The gore hung midair about a foot from where the man had been. Nice effect. I'll have to remember that. You left me with your books and notes written in a tongue that I've never heard, but have been able to read and write since birth. Another arc, another soldier. I know things now that I've never dreamt possible. I will conquer the entire world, and I have you to thank. You and Fred. On cue, Fred came out from the back room. Hey, he said nonchalantly, like I had just run out to get food. Hey, I replied, not knowing what to say. Here I stood before an evil sorceress and her loyal henchman. The juxtaposition was almost funny. I'm going to have to stop you, we both said simultaneously. Ha, one of you owes the other a drink, said Fred, again simultaneously. Shut up, Fred. Fred chuckled. Lightning shot out from her fingertips. It was met by my own. There was a mutual annihilation zone between the two of us. Stone in the floor was starting to weather away. The light was blinding. The back and forth was even. By the gods, she was strong. I should have overpowered her easily based on her inexperience. I put a final push into the energy. There was an explosion. I sat up to the view of Aurelian staring at me. In her hand was a stone. Around me, the rest of my retinue was unconscious and spattered with the inside of their exploded comrades. I looked closer at the stone. It was my soul stone. She leveled it at me and began to charge it. I'm going to take your power and add it to my own. I have the power, the skills, and your name. Fred leaned into her ear and whispered, followed by a short chuckle. She smiled and finished her sentence. Malacordeus. A wave of energy reached out to me, enveloped me. My head flung back. Her eyes glowed brightly, and she laughed maniacally. It was a good evil laugh. I lowered my head back to face her. Confusion overtook her face. That's not my name. Well, it was temporarily. I reached out and summoned the stone to me. Unfortunately for you, your name is public record, Princess Aurelian Astra Bulworth. The glow went from her eyes to mine, and the energy wave enveloped her. Her power was amazing, and now mine. I stopped short of her life energy. She just stood there in the middle of the room in a daze, until a sword ran her through. Boy Wonder had been awakened by the commotion. He ended her with a thrust through the heart. The evil is vanquished, Henry declared defiantly. His men roused, and at my lead, they knelt before him and declared him king of the 5 kingdoms. In turn, he named them his knights, and 4 of them as the fathers of the future kings of 4 of the kingdoms. There was much male bonding, and my tower was raided for goods, the few items I let them find. I stayed behind to clean up. At least that was my excuse. I removed the invisibility spell from Fred. Fred, what was that all about? I motioned to the almost serene body of the fallen princess. Yes, he said, pointing at the body. It was all about that. She was brilliant. You had me nervous until she said that name. Now I just have to explain to Razorbeak why I shot him. I started out the door. Walking behind at his normal pace, Fred helpfully added, start by changing his name. Razorbeak is a stupid name. Shut up, Fred. Thank you for listening to the story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter. Your support means a lot.